This is Reality Storyline Decoded, the podcast. I'm your host, David Mivshek. Episode 8, let's get to it. All right, so in episode 2, I had shown you a fate stack for the Donald Trump rally shooting. And it included the last names of the perpetrator, Matthew Crooks, and 4 victims, which were Donald Trump, who was injured, not killed, David Dutch, who was injured, not killed, James Copenhaver, who was injured, not killed, and Corey Comparator, who was injured and killed. Okay? And in that fate stack, and I'll describe what a fate stack is if you haven't seen me do a fate stack before, but what a fate stack is it takes the last names of people involved in an event, okay? And in this case, like, it's a shooting, so it involves the shooter or, you know, the one committing the violent act and the victims, okay? And it lists their last names from shortest name to longest name and puts all their letters of their names in a column. So you got the first letter of each last name in a column, the second letter in the second column, so forth and so on, until you get to the last letter of the longest name. And all the names are from shortest name to longest name. And I'll show how I connect the letters, but it basically, when you decode it, these fate stacks, they come out to be about something to do with those people involved in whatever they're involved with in the event, okay? And you can think of what I'm doing. Okay, so basically what I'm doing is you can use numbers, okay, and use it to do math, right? Mathematics. And mathematics can be used to measure the physical universe, or the physical aspect of reality, okay? You can measure a book's width and height, measure the letters of the book, the width and the height. And you can get all these different calculations and so forth and so on, right? And you can use different type of like operations like addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. And then once you start getting more complex math, you can get into complex equations and use numbers in different various ways to obtain a solution. That's mathematics. My study that I've developed is ordotics, okay? When you use mathematics, it goes into the actual matrix of reality, the programming language, and it's basically math is decoding the physical aspect of reality. It's showing the numerical part of that program. Ordotics uses letters, alphabetical letters, in the same fashion they use numbers, not in the same exact way, but you're manipulating letters not to elucidate the physical setting of reality. You're not getting measurements of the physical aspects, you're getting measurements of the storyline, okay? So like as I mentioned with mathematics, you can measure a book's height and width, the letters, the width and height, but you're never going to understand what the story's about just using numbers, right? You have to read the letters, you know, that are in the book that are clumped together in words, you know, from one word to the next in a sentence, a paragraph, so forth and so on, to understand the meaning of the book, okay? And so you can go to, let's say, to the Donald Trump rally, and you can measure the stage, and you can measure Donald Trump, and you can measure the weather, and you can do all these things, but it's not going to tell you what the event's about and what's going on in the event, or the important aspects of the event that occurred, okay? And that's where ordotics comes in, and it uses letters, again, in a similar fashion in numbers by using them in different ways to obtain an answer, and using these letters in a certain way reveals the storyline, because you're measuring the storyline based on letters that are already available in that event, okay? So the last names of the people are unique in this event, because if you go through a timeline of events from all the way in the past, all the way in the future, not just in that event, for all of time, right? And you, let's say you take 5 first names, there are 5 first names of these 5 people in the fate stack. Donald Trump, so you have Donald, David, Matthew, James, and Corey. You take those 5 names and you just use not the people, don't attach it to the people, just the names, the first names. And you take those first names in a clump and you run it across the timeline of events. You may hit from the way past to the way future multiple times those first names come together in an event, okay? But if you take only the last names, okay, so you take Trump, Dutch, Crooks, Copenhagen, and Comparator, and you take those last names and you run it through a timeline of events for those 5 names coming together in an event at the same time in the same place and so forth and so on, you're going to come across very, very minute amount of times those last names come together, okay, and have meaningful, like, significance when you compare them to one another. You may go to a carnival, let's say, and or a circus or a rock concert, and those 5 names are dotted throughout the audience members. But if there's 100 audience members and nothing really happens with those 5 people, then actually nobody knows those 5 people were there. It's not going to be reported on. It might be in the ticket sale log, but nothing eventful happened, right? So these are impactful moments that occurred through the timeline of events. So you can think of it like a computer language, okay? So in episode 2, I showed the decoding of this fade stack. For those who haven't seen me decode a fade stack, I'll do that real quick so you can kind of see what's going on. So basically you have a matrix of letters again. You have the shortest name to the longest name. You have 3 people here that were injured: Donald Trump, David Dutch, and James Copenhagen. You have the perpetrator of the shooting, Matthew Crooks, and we're only using the last names again. And then you have the victim of the shooting who did pass away. And again, sorry for the passing for his wife and 2 daughters he left behind. And that's Corey Comparator, okay? So what you do then, because you have a group of letters in a matrix, okay, you connect the letters to create new words, okay? Now I'm going to dispel the myth that you can just connect letters in any old way you want to create any word you want. Well, that's true, you can. But according to the rules, you'll find out very quick it doesn't work out for you if you just want to create any word you want. And I'll show you as I go along what I mean. So the first word that I'm going to box in, and what I'm doing is, you can only connect letters horizontally or vertically, never just diagonally, okay? So that limits the amount of ways you can connect letters to make those own words that you want to make, so, you know, that supposedly, you know, somebody's going to do, and that's the only way this could work. No, these are connecting letters horizontally or vertically to create a new word, and all letters have to be connected that way in every word. So this new first word is going to be Trump, okay? And you listed first in the answer. So this is another way to reduce the way that somebody can choose to make any words they want in the answer, right? First of all, you have only so many vowels and the certain letters. You don't have every letter available to you, okay? So this word Trump then becomes the first word in the first phrase. So you remove the words from top left to bottom right. So we take out Trump first, okay? So now that reduces the structure of the answer, because you have to take out words from top left to bottom right, and all you can do in the end is add punctuation to give it meaning, okay, for reading purposes. Now in this sense, the word Trump is not used as Donald Trump's last name. It's built from that, but the actual word Trump, I'm reading a definition over here, is a verb which means to get the better of, to outdo or top, like you trump your opponent in a game of chess, right? So something has gotten trumped, okay, is outdone. Something's had gotten the better of it, right? And by the way, say hello to my microphone. Last 7 episodes, the first 7 I should say, I wasn't using a microphone. I'm recording straight into my iPhone, and I was getting static and kind of white noise, and I think this will cut down. So I'm going to kind of build up the podcast as I go along with the different episodes. So something's gotten trumped. Now the next group of letters on the box in, again, only horizontally or vertically, but never just diagonally. And I mean just diagonally because this word connects the D, U, R, and the T. Now the T and the R are part of the same word. You could say that's a diagonal connection, but they're only connected diagonally because this R is vertically connected to the U and the U is horizontally connected to the T. And when you take out the block of letters, because you have 4 letters, you don't really get to choose all these different words you want to make. You got 4 letters, you can just, when you take them out, they can be rearranged anagrammatically. And when you take out those 4 letters, you get the word turd, T-U-R-D. And that's a noun, and it's a vulgar use of the word, and it means a contemptible person. And the word contemptible means worthy of contempt, meriting scorn and condemnation, is paltry, mean, base, or vile, held in contempt. And that's the meaning of contemptible. So when you say a contemptible person, you can say a mean or vile person, an evil person. Okay? So when we think of Matthew Crooks, he was shot by a sniper, and I don't have the sniper's last name, so I can't put him into the fate stack. That would be another part of the shooting. Okay? That would include the shooter's name of Crooks and Crooks's name. Okay? Now, the first phrase, so we have Trump and turd, and that's the first phrase, Trump, turd. So a turd, or a contemptible person, or a vile, mean person, we'll just say the evil person, Crooks, has been outdone. Well, he did get shot in the end. Okay, so we can say the first phrase is about Crooks. It doesn't explicitly say that, but as we go down through each part of the answer and each phrase, you will see how it all comes together and talks about each group of people. Okay. So the next group of letters, I don't want to make a mistake because I'm doing the marker. I can't erase it. High-tech stuff here. Is the word. So we took out the word Trump, and then we went down here, and then we took out the word turd. So you can say, like, it's a video game, like, poof, it's gone. And then you go across. So the T's not there, and we came to the letter C. I boxed that in, made the word shock. So we got S-H, wherever that is, O-C-K. Okay? So the word shock. And in this sense, it means, it's a verb, to cause to undergo a physical or nervous shock, which is a violent shake or jar, blow, collision, or concussion. So just imagine a bullet flying and shocking something, right? Okay, and I'll make sense of that in a second, like shocking the body, okay? So the next, and I'm going to do both of these at the same time so I don't forget. The next word is just boxing in the letter C. Okay, you might be like, well, how does that make sense? There's a letter C in a word. Okay, so as I was doing a fate stack for the band members of the band Deicide, and when I was first doing fate stacks, I was like, there's like information in this stuff. Like I was finding it and really starting to think it was starting to, be true. I didn't believe it the first one I saw. I kept going. These are something that I came up with. Nobody else has done before. And so it was like the first, second, third one was like, okay, maybe I'm just deluded and going crazy. But as I started seeing the messages and the specificity, the specificness of the information, I started thinking, no, this is actually preset in these names of the different ones I was doing. And I had done, so I'm like, well, the only being that would have the ability to do this, use an alphabet in a multi-dimensional way like this, would be God, right? And so I thought, well, because I was a heavy metal fan, being young, I still am, but, and I like death metal. There was a band Deicide, and all their songs and messages were about being satanic and different things like that. I'm like, I wonder if their last names have something in it. I'd be very curious if God had written like coded messages within last names of band members, if he would put one in for the band Deicide, and what would it be about? Because it's about, their music's all about Satan and the devil. And when you do like band member names, like last names of people in the same band during a specific time, like during the same making of an album, it tells about the lyrics of a notable song that the band has done. And so when I did that, I came to the last 3 letters, and they were the letter F, each one of them from the last name of the brothers in the band with the last name Hoffman. So I had 4 F's right stacked on top of each other. The one F was used for another word, and then I had 3 F's. I'm like, how does this make sense? And because I was doing some other things, which I'll talk about in another podcast, had to do with numbers and letters, I'm like, wait, maybe the F equals 6, like A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, D is 4, using it that way. And the 6, I did it, or the F, when I did it, lined up with the number 6. So it came out 666 is a block of numbers. And I'm like, that makes sense with the answer. I'll continue to use what I now call the alphanumeric conversion chart, okay? And in this case, it's used for a fade stack. And so the letter C becomes the letter, or the number 3, okay? And the letter 0 is the letter O. I had found that out because I did the musician Jewel, her albums, and she has an album called, the titles of the album, and she has an album called 0304. And I'm like, well, how do I put numbers in the matrix? Will they be used in the answer as a number? And then, like the alphanumeric conversion chart, 0, then I figured out based on whittling it down to the answer and figuring out I needed the letter O, and there it was, and the number 0 both times. So the 0 then became the letter O in the conversion chart. And then 1 through 9 is the letters A through I. And it works. And so I continued to do it. And so the C is 3. Okay, so the second phrase is shock. And I have the C there, but it's shock 3. Okay, so 3 bodies have got shocked. Okay, now we know Comparator's body got shocked too. But the difference is his like a annotated description of his event, specifically with Crooks, is in the third phrase. The first phrase is Trump turd, which is about Crooks getting, outdone. The second phrase is about Donald Trump, David Dodge, and James Copenhaver, about their bodies getting shot. There's 3 of them that were reported, okay? And then, so when we go to the next word, I'm going to make sure I get this right because I've screwed this up before and I don't want to. Okay. The next word, because all these are gone now, all these letters, you can only use a letter one time and be a part of only one word, and every letter has to be used. You can't have leftover letters and make excuses why they're left over. So that reduces the chance of making any word you want and any phrase you want in the end, okay? So we have the letter O, P, E, and N, the word open. And in this case, it means to make one or more openings in, or to cut or break into. So you have to imagine a hole is being cut into something or being broken into something, okay? Now the next word, and this will be the final word in the phrase, which has to do with Corey, comparator, is the word. So I took out open, and now see we're done with the third row of letters, so we go down to the fourth, and I'm hitting that C-O-C-O, okay? And that's the word cocoa, C-O-C-O. And not like, like the powder used to make a chocolate drink. That's with an A at the end. This is like C-O-C-O-A. This is cocoa, which is a noun. It's slang, and it means coconut. Now, you might be thinking, oh, like a coconut. Like, how does that make sense, right? Like the fruit coconut. Like, it's not that type of coconut, okay? When you look it up in the dictionary, coconut, it also means head, especially the human head. I'm going to hit him over the head. Hit him over the coconut is basically the phrase, okay? And that's, you can look in Merriam-Webster's unabridged dictionary, it's a word. It's not like you can go look in like slang dictionaries that are like urbandictionary.com or whatever that is, and find words people just make up on the street and put into the dictionary. These are words that are already in like Merriam-Webster common use type words. And even though slang is allowed, like it's not favored. You should be looking for nouns, pronouns, proper nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, words that have substance for characteristic and attributes of a subject. Okay, slang is used once in a while. I would say, and I could run the percentage and probably guess maybe 1 out of 100 times, 100 words, if maybe even more or less, I should say, like maybe 1 out of 150. So they're not favored, but they're used only when necessary, okay? So in this sense, you have cocoa, okay? So you have open cocoa, okay? So something's breaking into and creating a hole, in a human head. Now we're thinking of that bullet, okay? So we have the first phrase, which is Trump turd, which means to overcome the contemptible, vile, evil person, which is Matthew Crooks, because he was the one that was instigating or perpetrating the event, you know, the shooting. And then you have the shock, the three. It doesn't say anything got open or hurt, like killed or anything. It's just three got shocked, their body got hit, got injured, okay? And then the third phrase is open cocoa. So now it's saying not just shocked. Like, I'm not saying nobody else got a wound, right? But now it's just describing past like an impact. It's saying there's a head that got shot, right? And it got broke into. Now you could say, well, Donald Trump's ear got shot, right? But he's included in the ones that are injured in the three, right? Because he didn't pass away. So in this phrase, you have open cocoa, which is, again, Corey Comparator's, you know, he got shot in the head. Okay, so the bullet went in his head, and that's the open cocoa. Now, the fourth phrase, because that takes care of all the people involved. Now, the fourth phrase tells you the reason why the shooting occurred and what kind of the result, okay? So the fourth phrase starts with the word hamper, H-A-M-P-E-R, hamper, okay? And so all these other letters are gone, Cliff, like a game, you know, like a video game. And now we went across, we used cocoa. Those letters for open are out there, and I hit the letter H right here. And then I tied it to these 5 letters down here to spell the word hamper, H-A-M-P-E-R. And the cool thing about ordotics and like elucidating the storyline this way and seeing the programming code, it's people find math difficult. Like once you get past like the easy operations, you know, and things like that, once you start getting into like, you know, more nuancey type equations, you know, and there's all these symbols that are Greek and stuff, people are like, I don't get it, quantum mechanics, the math, what? You know, this is very simple. This is like you take some letters and names, and you connect them in an easy fashion, you follow some rules, and you see the storyline pop out, okay? So this word hamper means, is a verb to interfere with the operation of or disrupt. So you're hampering an operation, you're disrupting it, okay? You're trying to cause it to not happen. Next word is the word A, okay? Right there. So hamper's gone, we went across that box in A. So hamper A, yes, what's being hampered? What's the next word? And that word is the word vote. V-O-T-E. A's gone, all the other ones are gone. We're here on the word vote. So hamper a vote being the active process of voting. Donald Trump was campaigning, right, for the Republican Party, and he's already the nominee. Now, Crooks's, you know, intention was to shoot Donald Trump, okay? And by shooting Donald Trump, his intention was to kill Donald Trump. If he killed Donald Trump, then Donald Trump would not be the nominee for the Republican Party anymore, which would throw the whole Republican Party into disarray because that's the candidate they're relying on. So, in a sense, by you know, if he would have gotten away with it, he would have caused a disruption in the voting process for Donald Trump. So you can look at it kind of in that sense, okay? He's disrupting the voting process by removing Donald Trump off the ticket and losing a major candidate that's supported by pretty much every Republican, you know, at least in, you know, action. They may not want him to be president, but they want to go along with what the party does, type deal, right? Okay, and then that leaves us with 3 letters. And the letters are E, R, and R for the word error, E-R-R. And that means to be inaccurate, okay? So the last phrase is hamper a vote, comma, error, or hamper a vote and error, okay? So the idea is to disrupt the vote, right? But the word error means to be inaccurate, and Matthew Crooks was inaccurate on the shooting, as shots because it missed Donald Trump by mere millimeters. And again, still somebody did pass, and I think it's important to take a moment and think about somebody did pass that day, Corey Comparator, who left behind a wife and 2 daughters. And there was podcasters, mostly on the conservative, side, saying it was like divine intervention, that Donald Trump didn't get hit, like God had something to do with it. Well, then, if you're going to say that, you really have to, answer the question, then why didn't God just make it so Matthew Crooks didn't get the bullets in the gun? Like, the bullets could have fumbled and fell off the roof. And then Matthew Crooks got caught and no shots went off. Or if God was going to come in and intervene at that last moment, why didn't he do something to get Corey out of the way? Corey left behind a wife and 2 kids, 2 young daughters, So the divine intervention is, in a way, sounds like you're, giving praise to God and giving glory to Donald Trump and stuff, but you're really just kind of negating a whole family that has to deal with a passing. But that's not to say there's not divine intervention in a general sense, because these phrases would not be built into the last names of people unless there was a being with that intelligence and capability to pre-script reality's storyline to the letter level, okay? So it's not like the script was written in the last moment, because the last names have been around forever, for a very long time, and probably changed over time from, families moving from one country to the next, right? You lose letters, you gain letters. A family with the last name, let's say, just General Smith, back in the days, if they moved to, let's say, Poland, it might become Smith-Ski. Might add different letters or take different letters away, whatever. Or names just get misspelled along the way. So all this is pre-planned. It sounds very nuanced and difficult to do, right, if you're planning it, but if you're like a supreme being, you would not just look at language in this sense, if I'm correct, right? You wouldn't look at it like just like letters you string along to give, meaning to, and then give humans the ability to use it. You would do that, but on the other sense, you would have that same basis for language, the letters, to use to make a computer code, okay? And to program events in time. And so you would see it as the programmer seeing the computer language along with what's actually happening, what that computer language is actually making happen, or in this sense, it's not a computer language, but in the general sense. Like if somebody's playing a video game, right? And you're the person playing, but you know nothing about, languages that make video games work. You would see all the scene, you would be playing, you'd be immersed in the visuals, the setting, the storyline, making sure things, get from one level to the next and all that stuff. But you wouldn't see the code, right, that runs it. If you're the computer game maker, right, of that video game, you would sit back and be able to see the setting and all the things that are produced by the code, and you would also understand the code, right? And the code isn't just being like, let's say it's Super Mario Brothers. Like, the code isn't like Super Mario Brothers jumps on a pipe. It's numbers and letters and symbols and how the computer, interprets that and then executes it. So you got to kind of look at it as like multi-dimensional. Okay, so today I had shown the breakdown for this fate stack in episode 2, the one I just done, but today is now the Trump rally shooting scenes, okay, or snapshots is the right word, snapshots. And what that means is during this event, you had these 5 individuals involved in the event, right? The horrific event. Now, if let's say you open up in a filing cabinet and you're like, okay, you go to a filing cabinet, it's like events that occurred along the storyline of life, okay? And you're like, wow, and you open up that cabinet, right? And you start flipping through the files, and you're like, oh my God, it's the Donald Trump rally shooting. And you're like, okay, and there's folders in there. And you're like, oh, what's this folder? Let's say one folder says perpetrator plus injured plus murdered. Okay, you got the victims and you got the perpetrator. You got all 3 types, right? And then in the next file you open up, okay, let's say that next file is and I'm going to show you in on an actual fade stack here. Let me just kind of get out the one that I want. Okay. It has the perpetrator and just the injured, okay, without anyone being killed. Okay, so that's the other file, right? And then the third file you open up is the name of the perpetrator crooks and the victim who did get killed, which is comparator. So you have one file that lists everybody, the perpetrator and all the victims. You have another file that lists the perpetrator and only those who got injured but not killed. And then the third file, you have the perpetrator plus the one who got injured and killed, okay? So each one becomes a snapshot of the event, okay? So what I'm going to show you next, okay, just keep in mind this answer exposes the shooting of Matthew Crooks, the injuries of the three victims, Dutch, Copenhagen, and Trump, the shooting and killing of comparator, which is the third phrase, and then the last phrase talks about the general idea of what the event, what was the purpose for the perpetrator to do the shooting, okay? This next one I'm going to do is the three that got injured, Donald Trump, David Dutch, and James Copenhagen, plus the perpetrator. So the first word that I'm going to box in is the word turd, just like before. You can see those letters right up there in the corner, T, U, R, and D. Take them out, like an anagram, you can switch them, okay? And then it creates the word down here for the first one, turd, okay? And turd, again, if you're just joining or cut in and start watching from this point on, I guess, is a contemptible person. And a contemptible person, what does contemptible mean? That means worthy of contempt or meriting scorn and condemnation, is paltry, mean, base, or vile, or held in contempt. So in this sense, it means Matthew Crooks is a person who is vile, okay, because he did the shooting, right? Or he's evil, okay, that's another way of saying it. All right, so the second word that I'm going to box in is the word chump, C-H-U-M-P. Should be making my marker up a little higher there, but you can see the letters still. U-M-P-C-H, spelled C-H-U-M-P, chump, right? And a chump means, I'm flipping through, I don't have a big desk here, so just bear with me. The word chump means a stupid lout, a blockhead, or a fool. Okay, they're all synonyms, but, kind of each other. So there's a turd, and how it's written in the phrase is turd/chump. So it's basically saying the turd is the chump. We're talking about the same person. So the contemptible person or the evil person is also a blockhead or a fool or a dummy, right? So it's given kind of these degrading, kind of names for Crooks because he did the shooting, right? Okay, so the next word that I'm going to box in, I'm going to make sure I get it right. Because I'm doing it in marker, I can't go back and correct myself. Okay, because sometimes letters are the same near each other, and if you box it in, it's like, yeah, I meant to go with the other word. Okay, so these letters are gone, these letters are gone. We go across the second row and hit the T, and we got the word root, R-O-O-N-T. And in this sense of the word, root means it's a verb, means to pull, tear out, or remove often by force, to root out, okay? So we have a turd, or an evil person, who's also a chump, a dummy, blockhead, fool, who's doing something to remove something by force, okay? Now, the last word of this first phrase, like before, is the letter C, or if we go to the alphanumeric conversion chart for this fate stack, C again is the number 3, okay? So the first phrase is there's a turd or chump who roots out 3, okay? So there's 3 people within this event who were removed by force, okay? And in a sense, if you imagine the event, it's not people just leaving on their own, I guess, I don't want to say free will, but leaving peacefully out of the rally at the end, right? Crooks did the shooting, and people left the scene based on the force, the violence that Crooks created, okay? So in this sense, the word root is meaning these three were removed from the event through force, right? They didn't leave because they had to go to the bathroom. They didn't leave because they wanted to go get something to eat. They didn't leave because, you know, somebody called them in the family and said, hey, we need you over here quick. They left because of the violence and the force caused by Thomas Crooks through, you know, the shooting. So in that first phrase, we're going back to talking about the three that were injured, okay? And it's calling out, you know, Matthew Crooks as the turd in the chump. The next word starts a second phrase, and it's, so I took out root, I went across and used a K, so suppose the word Kens, K-E-N-S. In the sense of the word Ken, it's not the name of somebody. Ken is also, and all these words are in Merriam-Webster's Unabridged Dictionary. These are not made-up words. These have meaning, okay? The word Ken is a noun. It means a sight or view, especially of a person or a place, okay? So it's a sight or view. You're looking at something of a place or a person, okay? So it's either a place or a person. Place or a person. Just keep that in mind. We're sighting or viewing a place or a person. Okay. And when you say Kens, this means there's sights or views of places or people, okay? Because it's a plural. It's not just a Ken, it's Kens, okay? The next word, when you box in the letters, is C-O-P, the word cop. Okay, we just went down because there was no other letters in this row. We went down to the fourth row and pulled out the word cop. So a police officer, somebody of the law, right? Somebody who enforces the law. So in this sense, so we're viewing or seeing a cop, right? Something to do with a cop or, you know, something like that. And then in the next word that I'm going to box in is the word, I believe it's not Haver, I believe it's pronounced Haver. I could be wrong. It's H-A-V-E-R. So those letters were right here at the end, H-A-V-E-R. And it's a word that means comrade or associate. It's a noun. It's a comrade or an associate. So think of the event, right? You think of, you have Matthew Crooks, the turd, the chump, you know, getting people removed out of that area by force, okay? And we're specifically speaking of these three injured victims in the first phrase. Whereas in the previous Fate Stacks snapshot I had shown you, we talk about, you know, the bodies getting shocked with those three. So we're back talking about specific individuals as a group of people. And in the next phrase, we're talking about there's a viewer's sight of cops and comrades of those cops, okay, associates of those cops, which would be like the Secret Service or anybody else that was there that was local law enforcement, you know, connected to the local law enforcement cops and different things like that. Whoever was there besides the police officers. So in the second phrase, we have Kens, which again means sight or view, especially of, in this case, people. And then you have, you know, a cop, and then slash Haver. I put slash because it's a comrade or associate of the cop. So it's kind of like cop associate. So you know they're together, okay? So this Fate stack goes one step beyond the other one, this first one I had shown you. This one just, well, I shouldn't say one step beyond it. It goes, adds a little bit more detail in the certain aspect of what Matthew could see through his scope, through his view, right? He could see besides these three people, they were part of the audience. Not that he focused on them, but he focused on one, Donald Trump, right? The other two got hit based on the firing of the gun and Donald Trump moving his head or whatever. Then the second part is about also seeing that there's cops involved and there's associates or comrades of the cops, which would be like the Secret Service. So now we're talking about, the law enforcement that's included in this, okay? And it's also, in a way, and it kind of makes me think, because I don't know the name of the shooter that shot Matthew Crooks, but it makes me think too, like, when it says, like, there's a view, the cops and the comrade, is this actually speaking about the cop or the Secret Service member that had Matthew Crooks in his sight, right? Because it really kind of leaves it open-ended for that. I'd really like to get that last name so I can piece it together with Crooks and see if it elucidates that a little bit clearer. So just like math problems, okay, when you do mathematics, they don't have all the answers for everything about the universe and with the measurements. There's things that get left over for years that are not figured out, right? That details are missing. It seems like things work, new theories, come about because old theories fall away, different things like that. There's some of that with some of these answers where it's like, okay, maybe one more piece of information would clear things up a little bit better, but either way can be true. Like, you can see Matthew seeing the Secret Service and the cops, right? Or you could see that sniper who shot him looking at Matthew Crooks, right? Okay, so it's one of those two. And either way, it's interesting because one tells you kind of more of the view Matthew Crooks is seeing out of his eyes. The other one kind of adds in that other factor of the shooter of Matthew Crooks, where these other phrases so far haven't mentioned that. Be nice to get that last name, that's all I gotta say, for the purpose of this. Okay, so now in this third snapshot of the event, remember we opened the folder, we pulled back those files, and this one is the perpetrator and the victim who got shot and killed, Corey Comparator. So we got, now each time these are done, they're all done the same. Again, connecting letters horizontally or vertically only. Stacking names from shortest name to longest name from top to bottom. Connecting letters and using letters only once. And removing words from top left to bottom right. It's all done the same way each time, right? Now, you only have so many letters within this matrix and so many vowels to make those words with, right? So you can't go in there and just start saying, I want this word, I want that word, and then you're going to have the leftover letters you always want. It's not going to work that way. You're going to find out real quick that you see some words you like, and you go back to that matrix to fill it, to find more words. You're going to be like, oh, I don't have any vowels left, or those letters that I need are not even in the last names, or they're not even close to each other. I can't connect them anyway, right? So you kind of get, it kind of traps you. It's kind of like, okay, you got this closed system of letters to work with in a certain way, and you might be able to come out with one or two other phrases, but you'll find out that they're usually nonsense, like, pig, jump, mountain, or something like that, or ones that have nothing to do with an event. So when you see one with an event, it's like, okay, that's making sense. It's like you go to an investigation scene, right? And it's a shooting, let's say in an alleyway, right? You're going to be like, there's a paper bag over there. It might have something to do with it. It might not, but it might be connected. It might not. And then in the end, you're like, oh, that paper bag had nothing to do with anything, right? So you don't use it, right? You don't say, oh, well, the paper bag's part of it because it was on the scene. I have to use it. So it's like the same thing with the phrases. It's like when you whittle it down, you're like, okay, that phrase makes sense. The other one doesn't make sense. It has nothing to do with anything, right? Okay. So this can be used in an investigative manner because if you think about it, in this sense, an event occurs with those people. I take the last names and find these answers, solutions after the fact, right? It's like back engineering the storyline to understand how it works, right? But if, let's say, there was a way through, the brain, or if it's a computer program, whatever, to predict the people that are going to be there, to know in advance, like cabinet members of an administration, you can use those, right? Or president, vice president team, different things like that. You can kind of know those names in advance. You could solve it and see what that answer is before an event occurs. Because maybe since you don't know what the event's what it's gonna be, let's say you have 3 different choices, well, you whittled it down to 3 possibilities at least, and you're kind of now predicting the future, right? So this not only tells you about the past or something that happened, it also can be used to predict the future once it's understood the algorithm and how certain letters are supposed to connect and which ones should and which words should be used, so forth and so on. Okay, so this next one I'm going to do with just Crooks and Comprador's last name. Okay, starts with boxing in. Crooks is named Crooks. Okay, as you see right there along the top. Okay, so that becomes the first word of the phrase. And in this sense, it does mean Matthew. Okay, it's not like Donald Trump meant to get the better about you or top, right? This has to do with Crooks, okay, the individual himself. This doesn't have anything to do with, like, you know, people who go commit crime. I mean, he did commit a crime, right? His last name's Crooks, but in this sense, it means just the individual Crooks. Okay, and then since the first row of words are gone, we go down to the second row. Let me do this again. And you come across the letter C again, and that becomes the number 3 in the answer. So we got Crooks, comma 3. So it's setting up the subject of what's going to be talked about. We're talking about Crooks, and we're talking about 3. Now we know this is where understanding the snapshots together, the answers, helps understand what one answer of the 3 might be about. Because through this answer, we understood the number 3 to be the 3 injured, because the other ones were talked about, the other people, right? So we knew we had 3 left over, and therefore it must be the 3 that got injured but not killed. And then in this case, the number 3 meant the same thing, okay? So it carried on through the different through the different fate stack snapshots, okay? So the number 3 carries on that same meaning, talking about the 3 people who were injured, okay? And then the next word, it's like if you read a story and you use a name, Larry, right? And you talk about Larry in one sentence, you talk about Larry in the next sentence, you talk about Larry in the third sentence. Now, let's say in the third sentence, instead of saying Larry, you say Lair, L-A-R, okay? Like, I guess is a nickname, but it doesn't say a nickname of Larry anywhere before that. But you know, based on the information, you must be talking about the same man. Well, then you can assume Larry is Larry, and that's, you know, the nickname used for Larry. And the same thing with the number 3, just the information carries on. It's the same data point, per se. So the next 3 letters is the O and the M and the P of comparator, and you take it out, and it's not mop, it's pom, P-O-M. And it's not pom-poms like you go cheerleading with. Pom is a noun that means bang, like the palm of a barrel of a gun. Like when you shoot it, it's not the sound, right? It is the sound, right? But that would be like, that wouldn't be a noun, okay? That would be like onomatopoeia, I believe they're called, or like an interjection. Like, hey, you know, like you yell, hey. When you say you yell, hey, that hey is not the interjection anymore. It's now like you yell the word hey, right? But when you say, hey, get over here, hey, then becomes an interjection. And like slangs, interjections are kind of frowned upon in the answers I've learned over time. And it makes sense because you can't have an answer that's just like, hey, wow, awesome, yeah, dude, right? It's just kind of like, all right, that's not meaningful, okay? So it's used at certain times, like interjections, and hardly ever. I think 1 out of 500 times, maybe 500 words, maybe even more. But anyway, this is not used as an interjection. It's used as a noun for the word bang. It's a bang. Not that it's bang. It's the bang. It went bang. It's a bang, like from a gun. So palm. Okay, so well, we know he shot a gun, right? So we have a palm, a bang. The next word that is boxed in, you go across from the word palm here, all those letters are gone, so you keep going across, and you have the ERNA of comparator, and it's the word ear, E-A-R. And the ear in this sense is the anatomical feature, the ear, okay? So what do we know happened to Donald Trump's ear in this shooting? Well, let me tell you, because the answer is going to tell you right here. The last word boxed in is the word tort, T-O-R-E of comparator. So ear / tort, okay? So the ear was, correct usage would be the ear was torn, right? In this sense, okay, so we see crooks, there's crooks, Matthew Crooks, and 3. So we have crooks, and then there's 3 of something. We know that 3 of something are the 3 people that got injured. And what happened with those 3? Well, crooks was responsible for the palm, the bang, and those 3 includes a situation where the ear got tore. Okay? Something tore through the ear, like the bullet tearing through the ear. Okay, so we can see through these 3 snapshots information given about the event. It speaks about the groups of people involved. It speaks about the shooter and gives him a derogatory name, label, right? A couple of them. It speaks about that shooter hitting 3 people, right? And that is separated by a description about, instead of a body being shot, open head, okay? Which it then speaks about the victim who got killed, right? So through these 3 fate stack snapshots of the event, it speaks about these 3 different groups of people, okay? Now it's possible, well, it does speak about a 4th group. It speaks about the cops and the Secret Service people and any other police officers involved. But it's kind of left up to question at the moment, is it what Matthew's seeing, or is it the view of that sniper seeing Matthew? So it's one of the 2. So, but they're included, the cops and the snipers and the Secret Service, through the word cop and haver, or comrade, associate, okay? And then it also, through these fate stack snapshots, talks about the purpose of the shooting, right? And it talks about how that purpose failed based on an error or an inaccuracy, okay? It goes down to talk about the barrel of the gun, being the kind of the noise of the gun, the bang. It goes down, talks about different aspects about the victims, about how they got injured, like open cocoa, or the body getting shocked, right, from an impact, or an ear being tore. I mean, that is very specific, right? Because when you think of Matthew shooting someone, or anybody shooting someone without a purpose of, let's say, self-defense, or really just what somebody would call an accident, that person is vile, right? And the word turd basically explains, Matthew Crooks, right? And the idea of blockhead or fool, okay, is kind of a blockhead for doing that, right? You want to consider him smart. You want to be like, that's a smart guy. Like, I guess some people may, but they're sociopathic or psychopathic in their thinking. And an average person who's looking to do good in the world and wants to see good things happen for people, regardless who's getting shot or doing the shooting, wouldn't be like, oh yeah, that guy's not a turd. If it was like, do you consider them a turd or not? You'd be like, yeah, he's a piece of demon poop. Okay? So it gets very specific down to how people were hit, how people got, injured, how they were killed, things that were seen on site, and the purpose for the shooting. Okay, so one could say, well, that's just a strange coincidence. That's weird how it's all in there like that. Or it's prescripted and it's written that way. And then somebody might be defensive, right? And be like, well, who would have put that there? Like, well, we know no human did. No human sat back and took some time and came up with all these last names and a storyline and, invited people to the Trump rally because they knew it was going to happen. Whatever. No human did this. We can plainly see that. That leaves only two options, really. First option is extraterrestrials. But that would mean extraterrestrials created humans, gave them last names, gave them language, gave them an alphabet, gave them vocal cords to speak the language through, gave them pathways to take, so these different families with these different last names through all this time ended up together in 2024 at a site in Pennsylvania, right? So either an extraterrestrial did that with millions of years of evolution of farther than ours, but wouldn't that just be the same thing as a supernatural being like God programming all this? So models just get rid of the idea that it's some alien creature, right? Because you don't want to believe in God or believe that there is a God. Believing in God is different than believing that there is a God, right? Believing in God means you trust God. You believe that God is doing something that is, something that you either want to see happen or not see happen, right? This is believing that there is a God. And when I look at the depth of the information, right, and because I've done over 100 fate stacks, 150 fate stacks or whatever, when I see the information, I know that there's a God. I know that God put this in here. I know that God wrote it. Somebody might say, well, how do you know the devil didn't write it? Because why would God make all these bad things happen to people, right? Okay, why would God set up this event? What would be the reason for that? Almost killing Donald Trump and killing Corey Comparator and all that. Why wouldn't that be the devil? Well, then you would have to think God created people. God created time. God created people to do things, right? And to go out there, let's say there's free will, and go out there and do things free willingly. But then the devil came in and then was like, oh, I'll give people last names. So in the future, sometimes these last names will come to be about the events that happen. And then I'll make bad things happen according to what's coded in people's last names. I mean, that's just taking something more simple, like a supreme being who could create all this like a computer game code, right? And taking it to like another level because you don't want to believe this computer game maker, reality code maker, the script writer, the author of life, author of reality. You just don't want to believe that this author is capable of doing something that you would consider to be, or is considered to be, evil. But if God created everything, right? Take your mind off the script and everything else. If God created everything, and that's your belief, that would include what? Everything. That wouldn't be everything minus the things you don't want to believe God has something to do with. It would be, or not have something to do with, whatever. It would be everything. Even the things you don't want God to do or have made. That means nobody else made it. Because if it's there, nobody else could make it. Only God could make it. And anything at this level, down to the letter level in a script, there's no, let's say God did make everything only to be good, right? And intended for everything to be good. And hopes everything will be good. And it had nothing to do with evil things that happen, right? And even if God didn't have anything to do with evil, and he created, let's say, a creature like Satan, and Satan went out and, basically rebuked God and wanted to, take over heaven and have his high place and, whatever, all this other stuff, and, came in to make a nuisance of himself and make a nuisance of God's plan. All God would have to do, and believe me, God would do it, right? because God can do anything he would want in his own creation. He would just be like, yeah, not interested in Satan. No, you can't do these things. That's all you have to do. And if you got, and if, even at that level, if God couldn't control Satan, then you got a problem of a duality of control in the universe, right? And that's polytheism, which is not Christianity. Christianity is monotheism. You have one maker, and the one maker is controlling everything. Not the one maker controls everything, except some other beings somehow that have some control that God doesn't care to, have any power over. So it's just, the script has been written just like the math and the numbers describe the physical aspect of the universe or reality. The letters can be used to describe the storyline of reality. And then when the number system and the letter system converge, right, there's a threshold that's met. And so it's like they kind of are interwoven a little bit, right? And mathematics uses those letters to, let's say, talk about variables and uses them for placeholders, where ordotics uses them to count letters, okay, in that sense. So there's more to do with that, with the number letter system, combining with some other things I do. But for now, it's with the alphanumeric conversion chart, like I showed you, using only those 10 numbers and letters, 0 through 9 and A through I. Or I should say the letter O and then the letter A through I. So, all right, I appreciate your time. Next episode, still planning, stay tuned. I should say real quick, I did leave a description if you can download my song Traffic Like Love. It's on all music streaming platforms. It'll give me some kind of income to try to keep this going. This is the Matrix. What everybody wants to watch, like Keanu Reeves talk about or watch them in a movie do, or some other philosophers and people that have degrees from colleges, try to spout out about it, some simulation theory. This is the actual code. This isn't some hyperbolic general discussion. Okay, so I have written a book. It's called Reality Storyline Decoded 2. It's dedicated to query stacks. These were fate stacks, okay? These are somewhat different. So query stacks I've talked about in episode 3 through 7. You can go back and kind of look at that. It's a close to 500 page book. It's like 484. And it's all filled with diagrams and charts to discuss query stacks and the 20 query stacks that I have solved, okay? And what they mean and what their purpose is and everything like that. It can be found on Amazon.com. It's a big book. It's 8.5 by 11. This is a deck of cards next to it. So it's big. It's like a textbook. And it's all information. It isn't me pontificating on things that past philosophers said and different things like that. It's start out with query stacks and you end up understanding query stacks, okay? Which is part of the matrix of information. So here's humanity in their intellectual level, let's say right now, okay? And then I want to take that, and instead of like taking 1,000 years to get here, I want to take, I don't know, hopefully 2 years from now, because I'm already there. I've already done all the work. I want to take other people and take their intellectual level and be like, up here. It's like it jumped. Like, bang! Like that. Like, let's say you didn't know math, and then you didn't take like, 8 to 10 years of school to get to complex math. You just went one grade to the next. And you were like way up here and you understood things and you can use that at all times and understand it. Because you take this into your daily life and you start understanding things you're seeing and different connections that happen that you might be like, oh, that's a coincidence. Or some people call it a glitch in the system. It's like you'll understand it if you understand the matrix code, okay? This is not something necessarily that you can just become more successful because of, right? This is knowledge of understanding who you are, what you are, and what you're doing here on Earth, right? So, again, I appreciate your time. My name is David Mivshek. Support me. Get that book, Reality Storyline Decoded 2 Query Stacks on Amazon. Download my song. I have other products I'll talk about some other time. But I'm trying to do this all by giving you products that I make myself and that I can put my hand on and say, I'm good with it, and I took all the time to do it. Thank you.